The hidden cost of being a perfectionist. Perfection. It's a word that sounds like a goal, like something we should all strive for. From the moment we're young, we're told to aim high, to give our best effort, to never settle for mediocrity. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what does perfection actually mean? And more importantly, what does it cost? We live in a world obsessed with perfection. Social media bombards us with images of flawless bodies, perfect relationships, and people who seem to have their entire lives figured out. Schools reward perfect grades, workplaces value perfect performance, and society as a whole conditions us to believe that anything less than perfect is failure. But the truth is, perfection is an illusion, and chasing after it, that can be one of the most dangerous traps of all. Think about the last time you hesitated to start something because you were afraid it wouldn't be good enough. Maybe you wanted to write a book, start a business, or even just speak your mind in a conversation, but you held back. Why? Because the fear of imperfection paralyzed you. This is the hidden cost of being a perfectionist. It stops you from taking action. It convinces you that if something isn't flawless from the start, it isn't worth doing at all. But here's a question. How many great ideas, how many potential masterpieces have died in your mind simply because you were too afraid they wouldn't be perfect? Perfectionism doesn't just stop us from starting, it also makes us miserable while we're doing. Imagine an artist painting a masterpiece, but instead of enjoying the process, instead of letting creativity flow, they obsess over every tiny detail. They paint a stroke, then erase it. They redo it, then redo it again. Hours pass, and instead of feeling satisfied, they feel exhausted. The joy of creation is gone, replaced by anxiety, self-doubt, and frustration. This is the paradox of perfectionism. The more we chase perfection, the less satisfied we become.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But it gets even worse. The perfectionist isn't just hard on themselves, they're hard on others too. Think about it. If you hold yourself to a ridiculously high standard, don't you also hold everyone else to it? Perfectionists struggle with relationships because they expect people to behave in a way that's impossible. They expect their friends to never make mistakes. They expect their partners to always understand them without needing to communicate. They expect their co-workers to never fall short. And when people inevitably fail to meet these impossible expectations, the perfectionist is disappointed, frustrated, even resentful. And here's the most ironic part, perfectionism doesn't even lead to excellence. In fact, it often leads to mediocrity. Why? Because when you're obsessed with doing something perfectly, you hesitate to take risks. You avoid challenges because you're afraid of failure. You stick to what's safe, what's familiar, what you already know you can do well. But growth, true growth, only happens when we step outside our comfort zones, when we're willing to fail, when we're willing to be bad at something before we get good at it. So here's a question for you. If perfectionism is stopping you from growing, if it's making you miserable, if it's holding you back from taking action, why are you still chasing it? The illusion of control. Why perfectionism is a prison. At its core, perfectionism isn't really about being perfect. It's about control. It's about the deep, almost primal fear of uncertainty, of making mistakes, of being judged, of feeling like we are not enough. Perfectionists don't just want things to be flawless, they need them to be flawless, because anything less feels like chaos. And what is chaos if not the terrifying realization that we are not in control? Think about it. When you obsess over every detail of a project, when you rewrite the same sentence 10 times, when you hesitate to speak in a meeting because you're afraid of saying something imperfect, what are you really trying to do? You're trying to control the outcome. You're trying to guarantee that everything turns out exactly the way you want it to. But here's the problem. Life doesn't work that way. No matter how much effort you put in, no matter how careful you are, you cannot control every variable. You cannot predict how people will react. You cannot erase the possibility of failure. And so, perfectionism becomes a form of self-inflicted suffering, a relentless cycle of effort and anxiety, all in pursuit of an impossible goal. The most dangerous thing about perfectionism is that it disguises itself as a virtue. Society praises perfectionists. We admire their discipline, their work ethic, their attention to detail. We see them as high achievers, as people who refuse to accept anything less than the best. But we don't see the hidden cost. We don't see the sleepless nights, the self-doubt, the paralyzing fear of failure. We don't see the projects that never get finished because they're never good enough. We don't see the relationships that suffer because no one, not even the perfectionists themselves, can live up to their impossible standards. And worst of all, we don't see the joy that gets lost in the process. Because that's the real tragedy of perfectionism. It kills joy. Think about a child drawing a picture. They don't care if the colors stay inside the lines. They don't care if the proportions are wrong. They are completely absorbed in the moment, in the sheer joy of creating. But somewhere along the way, we lose that freedom. We become self-conscious. We start to judge ourselves. We start to believe that if something isn't perfect, it isn't worth doing. And so we stop playing, we stop experimenting, we stop creating for the sheer joy of it. And instead, we create out of fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough. But here's the paradox. The most successful people in the world, the artists, the innovators, the leaders, are not perfectionists. They are people who embrace imperfection. They are people who take risks, who fail, who learn, who grow. They understand that perfection is not the goal, progress is. They know that waiting for perfect conditions, for perfect execution, for the perfect moment is a recipe for inaction. And they know that the pursuit of perfection is in many ways the ultimate form of procrastination. Because that's what perfectionism really is, a sophisticated form of self-sabotage. It convinces you that you're just not ready yet, that you need more time, more skills, more preparation. And so you wait, you hesitate, you plan endlessly but never execute. You convince yourself that you're being responsible, that you're just holding yourself to high standards, but deep down you know the truth. You're stalling, you're afraid, and instead of facing that fear, you mask it with perfectionism. So what would happen if you let go? What would happen if you gave yourself permission to be imperfect, to create without overthinking, to take action without knowing exactly how things will turn out? Would your world fall apart, or would you finally be free? The fear of being seen, how perfectionism hides who you really are. Beneath all the striving, the over-editing, the endless revisions, and the hesitation, there is something much deeper at play. Perfectionism isn't just about doing things well, it's about the fear of being seen for who you really are. Because to put something imperfect into the world means exposing your flaws, your limitations, your humanity, and that is terrifying. Think about it. When you refuse to share your writing until it's perfect, when you avoid speaking in public because you might stumble over your words, when you obsessively edit a photo before posting it online, what are you really afraid of? It isn't just about quality, it's about vulnerability. It's about the crushing thought, what if they see me for who I really am and they don't approve? Perfectionism becomes a shield, a way to protect yourself from criticism, rejection, or embarrassment. If you never show your work, no one can judge it. If you never take a risk, no one can watch you fail. If you never let people see the unpolished, unfiltered version of you, no one can reject it. But here's the irony. The more you hide behind perfectionism, the more disconnected you become, not just from others, but from yourself. Because real connection, real impact, real success, none of it comes from being perfect. It comes from being real. The most inspiring people in the world are not those who seem flawless, but those who dare to be raw, honest, and imperfect. The artists whose work moves us are not those who create with mathematical precision, but those who pour their messy, complicated emotions into their craft. The leaders we admire are not those who never make mistakes, but those who own their failures and learn from them. And yet, perfectionism whispers the same lie over and over. If they see the real you, they won't accept you. So you polish, you refine, you hesitate. You think, just a little more work, just a little more preparation, and then I'll be ready. But will you? Or will you keep moving the goalpost, convincing yourself that you just need a little more time before you finally put yourself out there? The truth is, there is no perfect moment, there is no perfect version of you waiting in the future. There is only now and the choice to show up as you are. Imperfect but present, flawed but real. The people who matter, the ones who will truly connect with you, are not waiting for you to be perfect. They are waiting for you to be you. So, here's the real question. If you stop trying to be perfect, if you let yourself be seen as you are, what's the worst that could happen? And more importantly, what's the best that could happen? The freedom of letting go. Why imperfection is the path to greatness. Imagine for a moment what it would feel like to release the weight of perfectionism, to stop overanalyzing every word before you speak, to create without obsessing over every tiny flaw, to step into the world without the fear of judgment dictating your every move. What would life be like if you truly embraced imperfection, not as a failure, but as a necessary part of growth, creativity, and success? The truth is, perfectionism is not just exhausting. It's a lie. It tells you that if you try hard enough, plan long enough, and refine endlessly, you can eliminate every mistake, every flaw, every risk of failure. But life doesn't work that way. The most successful people, the most revolutionary thinkers, the most iconic artists and leaders throughout history, none of them were perfect. They failed, they stumbled, they made mistakes, but they kept going. They didn't let the fear of imperfection stop them from putting their work into the world, and because of that they changed it. Perfectionism tricks you into believing that your worth is tied to flawless execution. But your worth is not in how perfectly you perform. It's in your willingness to try, to experiment, to learn, to grow. When you let go of perfectionism, you give yourself permission to take action. You stop waiting for the right time and start making progress. You begin to see mistakes not as proof that you're not good enough, but as stepping stones to mastery. And, perhaps most importantly, you rediscover joy. The joy of creating for the sake of creation. The joy of learning without pressure. The joy of being fully present in the process instead of endlessly chasing an unattainable result. Because when you stop demanding perfection from yourself, you start to see beauty in the imperfect. You start to appreciate the raw, unfiltered, messy brilliance of life itself. So the real question is this: what if the very thing you've been avoiding, imperfection, is actually the key to everything you've ever wanted? What if your greatest potential is not in being perfect, but in being real, being bold, being willing to take risks without knowing exactly how things will turn out? What if the freedom you've been searching for has been waiting for you all along, just on the other side of letting go? Because in the end, perfection is not what makes people extraordinary. It's courage. The courage to start before you're ready. The courage to fail and try again. The courage to embrace imperfection, knowing that it's not a flaw, but the foundation of all greatness. So, what will you choose? Will you keep chasing the impossible illusion of perfection? Or will you finally allow yourself to be free?